maybe my favorite slide, and it kind of shows the wBTC TVL in Bitcoin terms. When you denominate it in Bitcoin, it tells a very different story, right? And the story that it tells is that this asset peaked out in 2021. Since then has, had a massive drop off and then has been really just down only.
And just to clarify, we're talking about wBTC wrapped Bitcoin, BitGo's wrapped Bitcoin.
Correct. So BitGo's centralized wrapped Bitcoin product, right? In 2021, this narrative of like bring Bitcoin into DeFi was like really big, and it had a lot of scale very quickly, right? So it's like, well, what happened here? The on-chain world got smart to the fact of like, is this really a good solution to have all of this Bitcoin custodied at a centralized custodian, and for us to embed deep into DeFi in so many different places? We have to trust one company, and it's in every single thing we're doing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. And I think that's why it's kind of failed to scale, failed to really kind of reach that next level of BTC-Fi that people maybe even were talking about in 2021. The Zenrock protocol allows you to put your assets under secure, decentralized self-custody. At its core, the product is a self-custody product, right? When you go to mint, you are sending Bitcoin from one wallet that you control to another wallet that you control. And in that second wallet you control, you have partial control over the wallet, but you don't have full control over it, right? And the part of the control that you don't have is the on-chain representation, zenBTC. But if you retain control of the zenBTC, you have full control of that asset. As long as you don't sell it, and you just like theoretically just hold it in an account, you're the only one who ever had access to that Bitcoin. It's not, a sale. It's not really even a trade at all. It's just moving Bitcoin from one account you own to another account you own. And I think it should be treated that way.
15K transactions, 60 validators, 3 of 8 MPC operator, a design that pretty much no one else out there can do or is doing. You have blown out our initial expectations. I think, when we were first thinking about this product, we were hoping, maybe 30 BTC TVL in 3 months was a good mark, and we more than doubled that. So just hats off to you guys and, all the work that you're
just getting started.
Yeah.
It's literally just getting started. Under the same exact playbook that we launched zenBTC, we launched zenZEC, which is bringing Zcash to Solana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Siegler. Welcome to the Q3 25 State of Zenrock. This is ZR Talks Ep.9, where we're going to be sitting down and discussing Zenrock's progress over the last quarter and look forward to future developments as well. I'm joined today, of course, by Aditya, co-founder of Zenrock, and Jack Krevitt, also co-founder. Adi, Jack, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for coming on and being the moderator for this one.
I know.
Maybe it'll be helpful for the crowd to give a little bit of your background and where you fit.
Absolutely. Happy to. So I'm a principal at 50T Funds. I work next to Adi and Jack on the investment side and have been involved in Zenrock pretty much since the beginning, albeit more from an advisory position. And of course, I had the luxury of hosting the first ever ZR Talks episode.
Yep.
Big hit. But it's glad to be back here, and hopefully we can start diving into some of the massive changes that have happened since I was last in this seat back in, I think it was August.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So yeah, I think it's great. I mean, we talk so much about other people's protocols on the podcast normally. So it's actually really nice to take the time to jump into what we're doing and dive in really deeply.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to that point, let's just start it off with a bang. So your first party product, right? zenBTC launched back in August. It's now middle of October. Where are we at today, Adi?
Yeah. I mean, we launched, August 1st, really. Since then, we have about 74 Bitcoin in stake and assets under management custodied in the Zenrock custody network. We just had our largest volume week ever at $4.1 million. That was last week. Cumulative volume is sitting around 21 million. A lot of this is really driven from sophisticated DeFi actors in Kamino. Our incentive program on Kamino is ending this month, but over the course of the last 3 months, it's yielded, I think, excellent results for the asset. I think Bitcoin on Solana broadly has really seen an inflection point over the past 2 weeks alone. You're starting to see massive amounts of volume being traded of Bitcoin on Solana. So really excited for that. Really excited that zenBTC is becoming a cornerstone asset in Solana DeFi for Bitcoin volume and trading Bitcoin and staking Bitcoin as well, earning fees off of that via trading. So, I think we're at a very interesting point in terms of assets that are traded on Solana, and Bitcoin is becoming a really big one there.
Yeah. So let's just focus on those metrics one at a time, starting with TVL. So in 3 months alone, you have had 74 BTC minted into zenBTC.
That's right.
So that Bitcoin is locked on the Bitcoin blockchain.
That's right.
Minted representations of that. How many holders are there?
About 1.2K.
1.2K.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of, distribution in just 3 months.
It's growing day by day. I mean, that might seem like a small number in terms of the grand scheme of where users are at in DeFi, but it is growing, and, it's exciting to see.
I mean, that also implies you have some large volume holders who are just minting maybe 1 Bitcoin each.
That's right. It's also a lot of like buy and hold. People that understand that yield is going to be a big part of Bitcoin buy and holding Bitcoin. And, at the end of November, something that we're really looking forward to is launching our full public dashboard for yield. That'll unlock multiple different benefits for holders. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah. So there's 2 different strategies one could do with their zenBTC. Now, as the first fully decentralized yield-bearing Bitcoin available on Solana, you could just buy and hold, as you alluded to, Adi, and just earn yourself yield on your Bitcoin, all done natively through fees, which we'll get to, Jack. But the other option is you could, of course, deploy that zenBTC in DeFi. And I think you had a really interesting chart where it demonstrated the amount of zenBTC used in DeFi compared to some competitors. Right. And you're saying at 75% usage in DeFi?
Yeah, around that number. Of the 74 Bitcoin that we have staked, about 50 of the Bitcoin sits in Kamino. We're the second largest Bitcoin asset by TVL on Kamino. So that number is also growing rapidly. Really excited to see where that falls by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that, it's right. And one thing that, we were talking about a moment ago is this dashboard, right? I think this is going to really change the game of the way that our product is viewed in DeFi. zenBTC is yield bearing. Everybody knows that. But it's one thing for us to be like, okay, it's yield bearing and like it is happening in the background, but it's a little difficult for someone to see. Maybe a very sophisticated actor could like manage to like look through block explorers and figure it out. But we need this to be super like transparent and clear, so much so that you can say like, okay, here's how much yield happened, and then you can see that on the dashboard and then click on it and it links you off to the Bitcoin block explorer that shows exactly like what the transaction was on the Bitcoin blockchain that was the yield payment. And that is coming very soon, probably within a month, where we'll have all of that transparency super clear. I think from a product perspective, that's going to be really the biggest accelerant for the buy and hold community. But no, I mean, in terms of our growth, it's been really exciting to see. Like what always makes me happy is when I wake up, all of a sudden there's like a new 2-3 Bitcoin in, and I'm like, I don't even know who did this. Someone on the other side of the world maybe. And that's really the power of DeFi.
It's the power of scale.
Yeah,
too.
It is. And it just shows that like our message is resonating with people, even people we don't know, people we're not speaking to directly, but they see it, they understand it. Maybe they're listening to the podcast and kind of understanding our vision. I think
that's it's a very important point. To that point, we're a very small team, right? We're about 7 people. We have no BD people. 90% of the people are engineers. And then you have myself and Jack. But the way crypto and DeFi and the on-chain economy works is that when you launch a product or a protocol, you have global network effects day one. And that is very important when looking at it from a TradFi or Web 2.5 or Web 2 lens, right? You don't really need that big of a BD team to really go after the market. You launch your product and someone on the other side of the world could mint it. Someone on the other side of the world could be using it. You don't know, but do you really care? No, you're offering this newer protocol, newer product to the on-chain world. So embedded global network effects causes Lindy and Metcalfe's law within, the on-chain economy. And it's something that, I being in crypto for about 5 years, I didn't really fully understand that. But then now once actively working on and operating a project, I'm like, wow, seeing that over the past 4 months really showcases the power of DeFi.
Yeah, from $0 to $7 million in TVL in just 3 months. I mean,
more than that.
It's quite impressive, and I think a large part of that is due to your partnerships that you've built up over the past. I would say you've been working on these partners for over a year, but obviously launched in the past few months, specifically Kamino. So let's talk about it. You've definitely have climbed the ranks at Kamino. Currently number 2 within Bitcoin pairs with CBBTC, and only 1 million away from number 1. So What led to that success on Kamino, and is that replicable as you make other partnerships in the Solana ecosystem?
Yeah, well, it absolutely is. I think maybe taking a step back of why we even chose Solana is very important for how we got here and why these partners matter. This is nearly impossible to do on Ethereum. We tried to do it on Ethereum, and it didn't work. It was days, weeks go by.
From a BD perspective,
From a BD perspective, for sure, yeah. In terms of partnerships, it's very hard to actually get stuff done with partners on Ethereum, and maybe I'll be proven wrong, over the next couple of years as the Ethereum Foundation goes through its restructuring. But that being said, we went to Solana and we were like, hey, we have this asset, we want to launch on Solana, and then from day one, it was very easy to work with everybody involved. Kamino has been incredible. They kind of act as like this Bitcoin bank and like liquidity layer within Solana DeFi. And if you look at the Kamino chart, you'll see just TVL increasing, kind of exponentially over the past year. It's pretty crazy. And that's kind of the foundation for a lot of assets that live on Solana. You have to have an easy way to deploy liquidity into DEX pools, and Kamino acts as that way. They also operate one of the largest lending protocols on Solana as well, which is massive. So really fortunate to be working with them. They're a fantastic team. And, I would say also the Solana Foundation puts a really important emphasis on working cohesively with ecosystem partners, something that I don't think any other layer one does better than Solana. They do a fantastic job at making sure that all ecosystem participants, partners know each other. They know what to do when working with each other and are connected with each other. So that sort of network has evolved dramatically over the past 2 years. But now it's very, very easy to access other protocols if you want to get in touch with them on Solana.
And is Kamino today the biggest Bitcoin liquidity pool available on Solana?
Yeah. In terms of protocol, yeah. Yeah.
And within that, you're number 2 with over 5 million of TVL.
Yeah. It's very exciting. It's growing dramatically. Like I said, I think last week was one of the largest volume weeks in overall BTC Fi on Solana. And I think from a top-down perspective, overall management from both, Zenrock, Kamino, Solana Foundation side of things really views Solana as the rails and Bitcoin as the asset to be traded on. And you're starting to see that come more and more with other spot assets that historically have traded an insane amount of volume on centralized exchanges, but essentially have zero liquidity and volume on decentralized exchanges. And that's really interesting because, with this new decentralized custody standard that we launched about 3 months ago, zenBTC was the first DCT to really be custodied in the Zenrock network. But over the course of the next, 18 months, I'm sure we'll have 5+ assets that are custodied and viewed as DCTs that are all tradable on Solana. We view Solana as the everything exchange, right? We want all assets, whether it's private credit, fixed income, real estate, stocks, and crypto spot assets to be traded on Solana. And Zenrock is a universal liquidity and custody layer to enable those assets to be traded on Solana. And it's kind of weird to think about, like, this hasn't come to fruition already, but there's a lot of constraints from not only a liquidity and volume perspective. When you look at like X stocks or gold, there's not a lot of liquidity for those assets right now in Solana, but it's just beginning, right? We're literally in the first batter of the first inning, and I don't even think the pitch has been thrown yet, right? People are still like going to their seats and grabbing their beers and popcorn and what is it?
Cracker Jacks.
Cracker Jacks, yeah.
Count me among them.
It's still very early, but it's coming to fruition. And Zenrock is at a very interesting point in that flow over the course of the next 9 innings, which I don't know how long it's going to take, but we can really act as that universal custody and liquidity layer to enable those assets to be traded on Solana.
Well, that's why I wanted to focus on Kamino outright. Let's start by talking about the partnership, because what you were able to do with the Kamino partnership was bootstrap TVL, right? And you helped bootstrap that initial growth through offering these incentives and seeing that actually play out. So now you've established a track record of being able to scale a DCT, right? A new wrap tokens on Solana, and you could apply the lessons you've learned to future products coming to market as well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, I think that the one point that people have gotten wrong in the past is like, and we've said this many times, but it's so important, like bringing an asset to another chain is actually not that hard, and it doesn't necessarily guarantee success at all, right? It's the first step. And really the grind and the more important piece, and what we've spent so much effort and time on, is like, when you bring an asset, how do you kind of guarantee that it's going to succeed and stick and have that kind of create enough depth such that it becomes like tradable and usable and functional. Make sure it's in the right places in the borrow lend protocols, right? It can be used as collateral, can be used as an asset that you can trade in and out of as a moment's notice to get certain exposures in relatively large size. And so if you don't have those pieces, you could bridge over $1 billion of Bitcoin and just sit it in one wallet and you haven't really done anything, right? And so that's so important for us, the way we think about every single decentralized custody token, starting with zenBTC. And I think that, to your point, the lessons learned from that will be really strong into everything else that we do.
And it's not just about horizontal expansion within Kamino, but it's also about horizontal expansion across the Solana ecosystem.
Right.
So we've specifically talked about Kamino, obviously given the scale, 5 million in TVL. But let's talk about Project Zero, another big partnership for you guys, allowing users to start lending with their Bitcoin. That's a very recent partnership. How's traction going for that, Adi?
It's going pretty well. I think we have about 6 Bitcoin that has been deposited into Project Zero, about 2 Bitcoin that has been borrowed. It's constantly growing day by day, and we're seeing traction, pretty much, by the hour in that product. I think Project Zero is a very interesting option for sophisticated DeFi users that essentially want to borrow against their entire portfolio. And it's the evolution of MarginFi, which has been kind of a darling in the Solana ecosystem in terms of enabling borrow lend functionality. So it's been going well, starting to see some more traction, especially as a ROC incentive program continues throughout the end of the year. I think one of the bigger parts to this from more of like a 10,000 foot view is that, zenBTC will become premium collateral, is already premium collateral in borrow lend protocols. Bitcoin is premium collateral in the overall grand scheme of crypto assets that you can hold and take out a loan against. It hasn't seen that much traction over the past years, but we really think that's because there hasn't been an asset that people want to hold or necessarily trust in order to put as collateral. And I know Jack has done a lot of work there, so chime in.
Yeah, and Dan, you should put up this slide because this is like maybe my favorite slide, and it kind of shows the wBTC TVL in Bitcoin terms, because everyone looks at it in dollar terms, but the problem is Bitcoin keeps going up. So the chart looks great, but when you denominate it in Bitcoin, it tells a very different story, right? And the story that it tells, that peaked out in 2021. And since then has, had a massive drop off and then has been really just down only.
And just to clarify, we're talking about wBTC wrapped Bitcoin, BitGo's wrapped Bitcoin product.
Correct. So BitGo's centralized wrapped Bitcoin product, right? And so people look at that and they're like, why, like in 2021, this narrative of like bring Bitcoin into DeFi was like really big, and it had a lot of scale very quickly, right? So it's like, well, what happened here? And I think that the on-chain world, there's really 2 reasons, but I think the main reason is that the on-chain world got smart to the fact of like, is this really a good solution to have all of this Bitcoin custodied at a centralized custodian, and for us to embed, deep into DeFi in so many different places, this asset that is fundamentally kind of reliant on one company to provide us. We have to trust one company, and it's in every single thing we're doing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. And I think that's why it's kind of failed to scale, failed to really kind of reach that next level of BTC-Fi that people maybe even were talking about in 2021.
Yeah. I thought it was really powerful. You go to Project Zero's homepage, and they say they're blue chip, a whole section for the best quality standard for lending. And right there is zenBTC, right? This is going to be the blue chip collateral of DeFi,
right.
Will be wrapped Bitcoin, but specifically decentralized, trusted, and secure wrapped Bitcoin in the form of zenBTC.
That's the first point, right? It's decentralized is, I really think, absolutely necessary for a product to hit the level of scale that it would need for like TradFi to get involved. Because by the way, I was speaking to people yesterday, and they were like, what is the end goal of BTC-Fi? Really what it is all Bitcoin trading, all of the TradFi activity moving on chain and using Solana as the rails to trade Bitcoin. The amount of depth you need to make that possible is just massive. And will all of that billions and billions of dollars a day flow through BitGo, wBTC, centralized custodian? Like, obviously not. We all know that. We need a decentralized option that matches the decentralized standards of everything else. And that's really the reason we created the DCT standard in the first place. But just to kind of get at this last point here that I think is important is like, the other fact of Bitcoin, and when we're talking about the level of depth that you need to make this exciting, is that there's such a large buy and hold Bitcoin community. So many Bitcoiners are buy and hold people, right? Yes, there is sophisticated. Yeah, I mean, I am too. You know, we all want to just be like, okay, let me just buy Bitcoin and just hold it forever, right? And so it's like, well, why come on chain if you're just a buy and hold person? If you're a DeFi person, it makes sense. If you're an institutional trader, it makes sense. But if you're just a holder, what's the point? And for a product like wBTC, there simply was no point, which is why you didn't see any normal just buy and holders just go there because there was no reason to do it. And we have embedded yield directly into the product just for holding it. That's so important because it gives a reason for every holder to care about this, right? If you're, you know, we all know this like implicitly, like if you're going to hold cash, you want to get some return on your cash. You want to be holding the money market. You don't want to be holding just cash. And the same piece is true for Bitcoin. If you're holding Bitcoin, you should be getting Bitcoin that has yield based on the custody fees that are generated just simply by holding it without any DeFi risk. And I think that being able to combine a decentralized product with that embedded yield just for holding is completely novel, and why we're starting to see the initial adoption. And I think why we'll continue to see massive adoption over the next couple of months.
I think it's a very interesting point because historically in crypto, every developer, every founder, every person that's involved constantly wants to upgrade the protocols, upgrade the blockchains that exist, right? You've seen the evolution of layer ones over the course of the last, 10 years, right? Starting with Ethereum, then you had all the, layer twos built on top of Ethereum. You had Solana, you had more high throughput chains like Aptos and Sui, constantly upgrading, constantly trying to provide a better user experience, developer experience for founders that want to build on that chain, right? That's still going on now. People are still upgrading infrastructure. People are still upgrading DeFi, right? You're seeing that with the evolution of AMMs and CLOBs and prop AMMs, which we can get into. I mean, Solana's like micro market DeFi infrastructure is constantly getting upgraded and providing better solutions for liquidity, for low liquidity assets. But you've never seen a constant evolution of like core assets, right? I mean, like you can probably argue that you've seen an evolution of like liquid stake tokens via restake tokens, right? But it's still not really existent, right? You don't really see that evolution. That's where Zenrock fits in, right? We want to enable higher quality assets to be tradable on Solana that are highly secure via our decentralized custody network that's operated by 8 validators, operators that all hold a shard of the private key, but also sharing economics of the custody fees that we receive to those assets makes them higher quality assets, right? Because everybody just wants to hold an asset, receive some form of yield in that native asset. That's what we did for Bitcoin. That's what we'll do for the next asset that we bring on in terms of the DCT standard. But we're trying to provide access to higher quality assets in the DeFi ecosystem.
I mean, we didn't have a name for it back whenever we came up with the idea for zenBTC. We didn't have a name for Decentralized Custody Token Standard, DCT. But the underlying thesis is what made me so bullish on Zenrock and what the dream and mission was. And it was very simple, right? The entire reason we're in this industry, in the crypto blockchain industry, is because we believe that decentralized ledger transactions operate at much better quality than any centralized transaction really can, right?
Yeah. Right.
That's the underlying thesis for our entire space. And yet when we think of assets, even assets that were based off of that decentralized ledger, we're all held in centralized ways, relying on centralized custodians, and we're essentially centralized assets. And here came Zenrock with a way to think about how do we incorporate that same ethos of decentralization to the asset itself.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And we've talked about this before, kind of bits and pieces, but look, at the end of the day, using crypto is hard. It's difficult. And as a result, even those who venture out and do all these incredible things on chain, like we can talk about like these ideals all you want, but at the end of the day, people gravitate towards solutions that work.
Yes.
Right. And that has been, say whatever you want about wBTC. We can make fun of it, say, okay, this is not going to scale, whatever you want to say. It worked. And since 2021, it was there. It was deep. You can buy a lot of it at a moment's notice at any time. And therefore, it had staying power, and it filled a need in a place and time in DeFi. So, that we needed to make sure that when we launched this, and this goes back to all the go-to-market BD stuff we were talking about, that when we launched this, the asset was just as usable, just as kind of everywhere that it needed to be as wBTC. And I think, we've began that journey. We've really made a lot of progress, but over the next couple of months, we'll even continue that, get into more venues, be in more places, and to the point where we're just simply everywhere.
Yeah. And to that point, I couldn't have put it better. You have to prove it out to people first. And I think part of that ties to what I want to talk about next, which is just incentives, right? You and I, we understand the power of zenBTC. Our listeners who are probably at this point 20 minutes deep into the podcast, hopefully also get the message and the importance of it. But if the average DeFi user is just going about their journey, they kind of have to first dip their toes in before they start getting further educated. And we see that process happen from your first purchase of Bitcoin to participating in your first yield, farming. So to that point, I think the incentives that you've put into these partnerships via Kamino, via Project Zero, they've really helped to bootstrap that initial liquidity. Can you walk us through what the incentives are today and if incentive programs will be core to what we're doing in the future?
Yeah, so on the Kamino side of things, for depositing zenBTC and cbBTC into our main pool, you earn, about $2.8 million of ROC, 2.8 ROC over the course of 12 weeks. That's distributed across 3 pools, but our main pool is earning about 9% APY via ROC incentives right now. Project Zero is a little bit less than that, but that's going on until January end. So, I think it's an interesting way to bootstrap initial liquidity, but overall, like, organic demand will come from the user actually wanting to hold this asset because, one, they're familiar with it, and then 2, they understand that it's highly secure and also yield bearing for zenBTC's sake. So that's a way for early users to be like, oh, okay, I'll swap some SOL or I'll mint some, zenBTC via our front end and actually hold it in my wallet. And then they see it more often, they learn about it, they see these podcasts, they see partnerships come about, and they're a little bit more excited because they understand it more. But the incentives are really a way just to get that organic demand bootstrapped.
And that's one way. And then there's also the airdrop way. I know we had a really exciting airdrop with Ledger recently. Is that part of the core strategy moving forward?
Look, I wouldn't say so. That was a very special airdrop we did with, Ledger, who's also a 50T funds portfolio company. We love the Ledger team. We had Ian Rogers on the last podcast.
Great podcast, by the way.
Yeah. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. That was episode 8. And we'll probably plan to do something more with the Ledger, Ledger edition, like Solana Flex edition ledgers. But I think airdrops historically have actually been like net negative for a lot of projects. I think there has to be a product that people want to use. And, over time, like developing a community, you want to develop it organically. You don't want to have like 100,000 people just farming your protocol or your product. It just doesn't make sense for the long term. And we're very much like long-term thinkers. We think about sustainable tokenomics over the course of like 7 to 10 years, right? This is not something that we're just doing in a bull market for a pump and dump. It's not the way we think. So, I think airdrops are probably part of our future in a small way, but we want to make sure that we have like a very tight-knit community and really develop organic demand in the best way possible. And I don't think airdrops are really helpful for that.
So the future is going to be focused on utility, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, I think that airdrops, like the problem is when you say, hey, everyone, do this thing and you're going to get an airdrop, right? Because then you'll just have people who like do a cost benefit. Like, okay, how many? Like, what if I spin up 10,000 wallets and do it a million times, and then I'll get X percentage of the money, and that'll be profitable, right? That is like the opposite of what you want, because then the second that airdrop happens, those guys just vanish. And it's also why you see in so many projects, a lot of good faith projects, not saying they're doing it, intentionally, but you see this massive spike in activity and then airdrop, and then it just collapses, right? So I think that airdrop should be something that, are more surprises. It's like, do cool things in the community. We did this with the Genius Drop, right? Where we're like, hey, put out a great tweet about us. We see it and we're like, this is really informative, great content. Like, we'll just give some rock, right? And I think that doing more stuff like that, surprise airdrops to the community, people who are, they're not doing activity in the community for the sake of trying to farm an airdrop. They're doing it because they like the product and they want to engage. And we're just like, you know what? Like, here's some zenBTC. Here's a little bit of rock, like just as like a reward for some of like the cool activities that they're doing, especially people who are kind of going that extra mile and like really not only on the content side, but like maybe doing things on chain, like actually talking to us in like the Discord and being like, hey, like, here's something I noticed about the chain, Yeah,
like, you want your community to be proactive, not reactive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Applying like a deadline to an airdrop, I've always thought is like very like net negative, actually. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm going to do these things until this deadline, and then once I get my airdrop, I'm just going to stop.
And then, of course, selling pressure on the token.
Yeah, and then your token drops almost 90%, and you're like, what just happened? All of the volumes were just not real. What's the real volume? Oh, it's like 2 transactions on the network. Like, you've seen that with like countless projects over the past 5 years. Past 7 years.
And we're building something much better.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we've talked a lot about the product side, right? 74 BTC TVL, 1.2K unique holders, over 20 million in volume. All that's been achieved in 3 months. But the infrastructure has been there for a little bit longer. So I also want to talk about the infrastructure, Jack, and also can we give some stats around that? So to date, how many transactions have been powered by the ZR chain?
We must be up to around 15,000 or so, just around there. I mean, it's amazing to see all the things that happen, even things, we're now starting to see, I mean, a big focus of ours kind of in 2026 is going to be on, how can we get more people to build cool things for Solana on using our technology. Right. And we're seeing people already experiment with stuff like teams. We don't even know who they are. They're just like doing transactions. It's like, whoa, like, it's just cool to see. I expect a lot more of that, especially because of kind of the power of the infrastructure we've built. zenBTC not only is an incredible product and I think something that's going to scale massively, but really also is incredible for us to get the brand out there and be a reason that people know who we are. And then they're like, oh, let me look into Zenrock. Oh, wow, I could do this, and this with it. Like, oh, maybe I'll try this, And that's kind of, I think, the progression that's just, again, first inning, maybe first pitch, maybe still crackerjack phase, I don't know. But, that I think is where it's going to go more and more. So I'm really excited to see that.
Okay, so 15,000 transactions on the ZR chain. And how many active validators are supporting that chain today?
Just about 60.
60 validators.
Something like that, yeah.
All around the globe?
All around the globe, completely permissionless. There's validators, joining all the time. Some drop off. That's just the way it is. It's a decentralized network all around the globe. I think we're on every continent. Maybe not Antarctica, but maybe.
22 countries, 5 continents, right?
Is that what it is? Something like
so.
that. It's always changing, and a lot of the initial validators that we went, to like when we first launched the chain, we had super tight connectivity with these guys that are, incredibly helpful in kind of getting us to where we are. But now we have people who just join. We don't even talk to them. They don't even message us. They just start running the chain. Maybe they get some rock token from some activity they're doing and they're like, I want to keep earning on this. Like, I don't want to pay a commission to someone else. I'm sophisticated. I'll just run my own validator. So it's really cool.
Got it. So it's incredible progress. I mean, 15,000 transactions on the chain, 60 validators. But let's talk operators. We like to make a distinction between the MPC operators and the validators.
Right.
Can you help us understand what that distinction is? And then maybe let's talk about the MPC operators for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, without getting like too in the weeds on it, the main point is that ZR Chain exists as our core custody network, and the MPC operator set signs transactions. And so, I always say at our core, we're a cross-chain signature scheme, a cross-chain signature protocol. Really, when you do our custody activity, what's happening is that, when you pretty much send Bitcoin to your deposit address on the Bitcoin blockchain, that action triggers a signature from the MPC, right? It triggers the really what it is, the chain sees that happen. And the chain says, okay, let's all come to consensus on the fact that this send has happened on the Bitcoin blockchain. And then it says, okay, well, this send corresponds to this wallet on Solana. Therefore, us as a blockchain come to consensus on the fact that we should pass instructions to the MPC to mint new zenBTC to the user's wallet, which is it's pretty incredible how it all works. We have we're going to market with a 3 of 8 threshold signature scheme.
And how does that compare to other, MPC wrap Bitcoin projects?
No one else could do this. No one else can do it. There's no one who has an MPC like that's really completely on chain like this. I mean, that we're aware of.
I think the point there is no one else could do that because they didn't build their own chain.
Well,
right?
that is
which
the
is
point.
A very important piece of all this. Off-chain, ledgers that are securing on-chain assets ultimately will have very big problems in terms of halting and stopping the chain, which I think you've seen this with a lot of layer 2 and protocols and centralized sequencers, which puts those assets at risk. But when they're custodied under Zenrock custody network and ZR chain, those assets are always on chain. Right. So there's no off-chain piece where the user has to embed trust in this management team to make sure that they're not going to halt or even run away with the funds, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the main point, when we started building Zenrock is we want to eliminate single point of failure risk and a honeypot risk with the assets that are on chain. Right. And given that we've combined the MPC network with our own, sovereign purpose-built, chain, we are not really subject to a lot of those risks that other protocols, whether they're built on ETH or even on Solana, are subject to.
You can have the most complex MPC signing scheme of all time. If it is off chain, then ultimately it's really all orchestrated by probably the team that launched it. Right?
Centralized.
It's effectively centralized. I mean, you could, you can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, this is off chain. It probably ultimately comes down to one server. Mm-hmm. If you really, really look into it in terms of the way the control is distributed. And I think that there's a lot of people who are doing this in pretty good faith. I don't think people are oh, let's try to trick the whole world. It's not what I think it is. I just think it's really hard to do this fully on chain. Mm-hmm. And therefore people haven't done it. I mean, the amount of work from a technical perspective that has gone in to make this possible, I can't speak highly enough about kind of Keelan and our entire cryptography team. It's just incredible the work that they do. But yeah, the point coming back to it is that the only way that the MPC can be triggered to sign a transaction is from the chain, right? So there's no other possible way that we could manually have the MPC sign something. So as the chain kind of continues to grow, we already have 60 validators, but as that kind of continues to scale and over time the chain becomes more and more decentralized, the ability for us, even if we were saying, okay, let's become malicious and let's just try to steal all this money, right? The ability for us to be able to do that effectively goes to zero, mm-hmm. Because we wouldn't be able to have any ability to control the chain to make that happen. So it's really powerful tech. It's really powerful the way that it's set up. It's set up for the long term. We talked about this with Ian when he was on the podcast about how, security is something that is either kind of the only thing or you're not going to do it, right? Yep. It's very binary, how you think about security. We think about security as kind of the core of everything that we're doing. Making this in a way that's long-term viable is everything for us in terms of the way we think about it. And quite frankly, we were slower to market than we easily could have been if we had cut corners. But we thought that, to do that would really undermine the long-term value proposition of everything we're doing. And so we did it kind of the right way, which took longer, but I think ultimately will pay massive dividends.
And we're already seeing it pay massive dividends. Just to put a bow on this section about, where we've come over the past three months or so, 15K transactions, 60 validators, 3 of 8 MPC operator, a design that pretty much no one else out there can do or is doing. And Adi, you know, on the product side, we've hit, you know, very, very strong growth marks. To that point, you know, here at 50T, we're always focused on, you know, our companies hitting or exceeding their targets. So I just want to get a little inside baseball. How is the progress of Zenrock tracking against our initial expectations back in August? And where do you think we'll be by year end?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think we would have ever expected that we've got here. You know, I think there was a lot of work that has been done over the past like 5-6 months alone to really get us here. And I you know, constantly think to myself that if you're not really like building the plane while flying it, you're not really building a startup. You know, if the plane's already flying, then at some point maybe it'll break down because you just moved too slow. I don't know, you know, but there's constant, you know, stress. And, you know, we, you know, both myself and Jack constantly push each other like every day to make sure that we're hitting our targets and making sure that we're executing. And I think it's also very core to our ethos and overall thesis of working in this industry is, you know, not to chase shiny narratives and shiny objects that historically pop in and pop out in crypto. Constantly see that over and over again, and it's very easy to jump to the next ship because there's a pretty girl there. But we're not going to do that. We have very, very like full tunnel vision focus on executing on our roadmap, and that's not going to change no matter how, you know, shiny the next object is, right? We do not chase narratives at Zenrock. We really focus on what we do. And what we do is, you know, zenBTC bridging as much institutional Bitcoin to Solana as possible, and also enabling other assets, spot assets, to be traded on Solana so that Solana ultimately could become the everything exchange. And that's our core mission. We're not going to chase, you know, these shiny objects that are going to come in and out of crypto, you know, throughout the next couple of years, 5, 10 years, 15 years, right? So, you know, so many examples of that, but we don't need to go into it.
Yeah. You guys may want to be a little more modest here than I will be, but you have blown out our initial expectations. I think, you know, when we were first thinking about this product, we were hoping, you know, maybe 30 BTC TVL in 3 months was a good mark, and we more than doubled that. So just hats off to you guys and, you know, all the work that you've
just getting started.
Yeah.
It's literally just getting started. And we're really excited about what's to come.
So speaking of which, let's talk about what's coming.
Let's talk about it.
So let's turn the page now. You know, Q3 is behind us. We're focused on Q4. We're focused on 2026. What are some of the most exciting, you know, catalysts that are upcoming for zenBTC? Any interesting partnerships? Any alpha you guys can throw out there?
I think one of the more exciting things over the next like 6 to 12 months is just broader distribution and access of zenBTC as an asset in Solana. We really want to upgrade our lending distribution, planning to work, you know, closely with the, you know, top 3 lending protocols on Solana, and hopefully, you know, could achieve a decent amount of you know, collateral being deposited as zenBTC. You know, so I think that's one thing that we thought pretty strategically about. It's really about building that initial foundation of DEX liquidity and volume, and then moving up to that tier 2 of Solana applications, which is really borrow lend for us. So that's really in the short to medium term. Ultimately, you know, in the next 12 to 18 months, even 24 months, by the end of, you know, 2027, ultimately think that, you know, a lot of these digital asset treasury companies and a lot of these, you know, institutional holders of Bitcoin are going to look to earn yield on their Bitcoin and look to do things that may seem sophisticated and esoteric right now, but probably won't be in the next 24 to 36 months. And zenBTC is going to be positioned very well to enable, you know, deposits of those Bitcoins.
So what you're saying is if like a Bitcoin DAT wants to deploy, call it 5 to 10% of their in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars into DeFi to put that Bitcoin to work, zenBTC is a great option for them.
It's really a buy and hold thesis. Once the yield is fully transparent and figured out from, you know, more of an access perspective, you know, I think zenBTC will be a good option there. It's you know, it's interesting because you see with a lot of like the Ethereum DATs, it's very easy to put Ethereum to work on the Ethereum blockchain. It's very difficult to put Bitcoin to work on the Bitcoin blockchain because it just doesn't exist, right? Smart contracts don't exist on the Bitcoin blockchain. So, I think Solana is definitely the home for that there, but, it's still like for early innings for that side of things too.
I think we're still getting beers for that one.
I think,
that's right.
Pre-game. It's a matter of like educating and pushing marketing for how these digital asset treasury companies and institutional whales could actually, use their Bitcoin.
To that point, Adi, I found it interesting because, even a couple months ago, we were having these discussions with some of the Bitcoin miners about maybe putting their Bitcoin to work in a very similar way the Bitcoin DATs would. And the constant pushback we heard was just fear over centralized custody.
100%.
And, the SEC risks that come with handing over the keys to something that belongs to investors to a third party that, the investors had no say over.
Of course.
And, with DMPC technology and what Zenrock has built, what you will enable is that self-custody to remain. So you create a path for those institutions, for public companies to feel secure and safe and still find a way to earn yield on their Bitcoin.
Well, it's funny. I have this term that I know is a little bit of a mouthful because, obviously everyone uses TVL in DeFi. Everyone in TradFi uses AUM, but also in the custody space, there is AUC that is used. But I think we should have like assets under decentralized self-custody, AUDSC. I don't know, maybe you'll catch on, who knows? But that is what it is, right? The Zenrock protocol allows you to put your assets under secure, decentralized self-custody. At its core, the product is a self-custody product, right? When you go to mint, you are sending Bitcoin from one wallet that you control to another wallet that you control. And in that second wallet you control, you don't have full control. You have partial control over the wallet, but you don't have full control over the wallet, right? And the part of the control that you don't have is the digital on-chain representation, zenBTC. But if you retain control of the zenBTC, you have full control of that asset. As long as you don't sell it, and you just theoretically just hold it in an account, you're the only one who ever had access to that Bitcoin. It's not a sale. It's not really even a trade at all. It's just moving Bitcoin from one account you own to another account you own. And I think it should be treated that way. And so, if we can get to the point where I think we're going to get to very soon, where we, continue to scale it out, continue to build it out and get to a size that is a little bit more appetizing for these larger players, they're going to realize wow, I can get, some level of yield just by doing effectively nothing and holding this in zenBTC. Why would I not do that? Especially for the digital asset treasury space that is, we all know is going to get so competitive over the next couple of months because everyone's kind of doing the same thing. Everyone needs to find an edge, right? And they don't want to take the edge of let's go and really use our Bitcoin in super risky ways.
Yeah.
So it's how can we find an edge that is very, very, very low risk?
Secure yield is a lot better of an edge than massive leverage.
Right. And some people will do that, but that's just a totally different risk profile and not what we want to offer. If you want to then take your zenBTC and go lever it up, do all sorts of things, go for it. That's the trader's option, right? We want the trader to do what they want, but that's not something that we ever really want to embed in the core product.
Just a tangent. I fully see those Bitcoin DATs eventually having trading desks
100%
that will just be operating in DeFi.
Yeah.
Just doing anything to find more yield.
Yeah, definitely.
You're gonna need
they have to.
So to that point, when we're thinking about the roadmap for zenBTC, immediate term, we have more partnerships coming in the Solana ecosystem, specifically, hopefully some more borrow lend options coming as well, all of which should bring more DeFi users to get educated and start, buying more zenBTC, helping ramp TBL. And then on the institutional side, we have a very compelling narrative that we're going to begin to, soft launch to some of these DATs and maybe Bitcoin miners, other large Bitcoin holders to see if we can get more institutional money coming in size.
And one other point I want to make, which I think is just so important to understand the long-term Zenrock vision, is every single thing that happens on ZR chain earns yield for zenBTC. So 5% of everything that happens, every fee that's earned, goes as yield to zenBTC. It's a really powerful mechanism, right? Because as we continue to launch more decentralized custody tokens, as we get more builders to realize all these amazing things that they can do with our with our core cross-chain signature technology, and as we really focus on accelerating builders into 2026, if a few of those products and services blow up, that's going to be massively yield generative for zenBTC. And we've architected this in the way, if you think about it, from the fact that you get 5% of everything, that the smaller the percentage of zenBTC as a portion of the overall activity on the chain, the more yield there'll be. And so I think that mechanism is so powerful and will eventually lead to us being able to find kind of this risk-free rate of Bitcoin, the elusive risk-free rate of Bitcoin. But I really think we are best positioned to do that because we have a way to hold Bitcoin, get yield on it, enjoy the benefit of the custody network. And when there's enough activity on the custody network such that the yield is high enough to attract more investors into zenBTC, then there'll be more mints.
I mean, I absolutely love this because part of the reason I love DeFi, as I'm sure you all do, is just this idea of, decentralized ownership. Right. You have a real stake in anything that you're investing in. To that point, if you're minting zenBTC, right, what you're doing is you're purchasing an economic interest in Zenrock.
Exactly.
Through receiving that yield.
Yeah,
you are.
That's a great thing about it, right? You're getting that economic interest while retaining full exposure to your Bitcoin. I mean, that's a pretty cool proposition. And ownership over it.
Your Bitcoin never leaves the Bitcoin blockchain when you mint zenBTC.
Right. We should talk about the next product though.
Let's dive straight into it.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the zenBTC roadmap, but Zenrock's mission has become so much more. And in our first ZR talks back in the day, we were still coming up with the idea of a decentralized custody token standard, but now it's here, Jack.
Yeah, it's here.
Now it's here. So can we explain DCTs in a very simple way, and then let's start talking about, what does the future of DCTs look like, and what are we looking to bring to Solana next?
Sure. Look, in the simplest way of understanding a DCT, it is that we have all of these crypto assets all across different chains, different places. How can we custody all of these assets with one trust assumption, which is decentralized, right? Because the point is that we've made this point that you want to bridge token A to chain B or to chain C. Those could be two totally different kind of custody assumptions, trust assumptions, two different teams. The code base totally different, right? How does it all work? And this is why this kind of the wrapped asset space, I think, has failed to scale because it's so hard to understand as a user, what am I even buying?
Yeah.
Right. So if we can create one standard that is applied to all assets that are in the network, then that if you get a Zen XYZ token, whatever that token is, it has the same custody as zenBTC, the same custody as all the other assets in the network. And as TVL scales, that should give people a lot of comfort. Let's say we get to 1 billion TVL. Now we launch a new asset. Maybe that asset only has 5 million TVL. But you say, look, this is the same custody that custodies this massive asset base.
It's kind of like consolidating all the trust assumptions that you see in crypto today under one security custody layer. And to your point, under the same exact playbook that we launched zenBTC, we launched zenZEC, which is bringing Zcash to Solana, working with all of our partners on zenBTC for the asset Zcash. I'm really excited to announce that. Under that same premise of enabling more spot assets to be traded on Solana, Zcash has been, a spot asset that is only traded on centralized exchanges for, countless years. I think it's 7+ years that it's been traded on centralized exchanges, but no DEX exposure whatsoever. That is directly, aligns with our thesis of enabling these assets to be traded on DEXs. So really excited to announce that, and excited to build out ZEC liquidity and organically over the course of the next coming months. We will have an incentive program going on, distributing about 2.8 million Rock rewards, and there will be some really interesting incentives with that vault. Our liquidity pool will be a zenZEC, zenBTC liquidity pool. So if you're a sophisticated LPer and enjoy earning incentives, you could deposit zenZEC and zenBTC, also start earning incentives. And we imagine that the trading volume will be, scale up over time, but there will be a lot of fees that I think the pools will start earning over the course of the next 6 months. ZEC has been an asset that has just absolutely exploded over the past 3 months, but it's not going to be the only time that it explodes, right? I think over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, ZEC will be a real cornerstone asset that is highly that I appreciated a lot in centralized exchanges overall, but the volume and the demand that I think we're going to see for the asset on pure DEXs and in DeFi is going to be, really strong. So really excited for that. Look out for, a lot of updates with our partners on that coming soon.
I mean, personally, I'm very excited about those incentives.
We probably earn 9 to 20%
Let's
APY.
See. Maybe higher at first.
Maybe higher, maybe lower, but if you're a spot holder of those assets, definitely get active. And Kamino has just done an incredible job of enabling access to providing liquidity for assets that you already hold in your Phantom. So really excited. Same playbook that we did for zenBTC, we're applying it to zenZEC. And frankly, I think as market infrastructure on Solana matures a bit more, we're probably going to see a lot of volume flow through prop AMMs, which just optimize the liquidity for low volume assets via actively managed liquidity. So that is when DEXs on Solana start actually competing with Binance, and we're going to start to see that mature, I think, relatively quickly. So excited for Zcash to be an asset that these prop AMMs could really use.
I just want to get a little more color on the decision making, because I mean, first of all, I just want to give you guys credit, because 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think this idea was starting.
This was 11 days ago.
11 days ago.
October 10th.
Wow.
And by Monday, which is October, 27th or something?
27th, I think.
Yeah, 27th, we have this fully launched. So
in 17 days.
By the time of this podcast, we will already have the pools live, the incentive program running. So
I mean, this is just the power of what you guys have built.
It's really just because we know the playbook, we know how to do this, and we're one of the few teams in Solana DeFi that could do this. And look, we're still a very, very small team. We have 5 engineers, maybe 6 engineers now, right? And that's it. And it's just Jack and I running the entire go-to-market, BD, partnerships, fundraising playbook. And I don't think we need to grow that more at all. You could do this in crypto with a very, very small team. That's the beauty of it.
You can. So, I'll say one thing about it, and just to touch just very briefly on like Zcash and like why Zcash, right? Like obviously, I think anyone who spent even 5 minutes on crypto Twitter anytime in the last month has seen a lot of talk about Zcash, Mert from Helios leading the charge on it. But the more that I've looked into it, it actually is really important to be able to have some level of privacy on chain. Like right now, people can't really see, how much you're doing on chain or what you are, because there's like a knowledge gap. Like people don't really understand how to use like explorers. But like as we kind of continue to move on chain, and people kind of everyday transactions are on chain, like you don't really want it so that like everyone
record.
Everyone in the world, like if you go like buy something at the store, like everyone knows like where you shop and like how much you're spending. Like it's just not the way it's going to work. So like some level of the ability to kind of have privacy is going to be really important. Zcash, we believe, will be a massive part of that, maybe like the leader in that. We think it's fundamentally just a very undervalued asset. Probably in very large part because it's really difficult to buy, even for like crypto people like ourselves. Like I got to download a new wallet. Like it's super complicated. Like yes, you can buy it on a SEX, but like who likes using SEXs? So this is really the thesis of DCTs, right? Let's give access to people where they are. People are on Solana. They want to just trade on their Phantom. That's what they want, right? So we are we're creating zenZEC for this purpose. We're really excited about it. And it's just kind of the second of many decentralized custody tokens. And look, the more activity, the more mints and redeems there are in zenZEC will all drive yield to zenBTC. And that's also part of the overall thesis.
Was it Mert from Helios who was like, I need Zcash on Solana now?
Who could do it?
Who could do it? 17 days later.
Near also did it as well. We think their chain signature product is great as well. But I think they haven't really scaled up, an asset on Solana, and we have, right, with zenBTC, and doing that same playbook from a go-to-market and BD perspective is very important for scaling these assets. Historically, all these like cross-chain protocols have always like wrapped different assets, put them on different chains, and then say good luck to you guys. Like we're not going to help you out with liquidity or volume. We are doing the opposite of that, right? We will actually look to bootstrap that initial liquidity from our incentive program and really go from there.
Straight out of this zenBTC playbook.
That's
exactly. And it's all, it's going to happen via, incentives to start, but then over time, we'll probably see the same result in terms of organic demand for the asset, just like how we saw organic demand for zenBTC. Once people taste it, they view it in their wallet and they're like, oh, I've seen this in my wallet over the past 3 weeks. What is it? Let me learn about it, right?
Yeah. Whenever we first came up with the idea of bringing Bitcoin to Solana, right, a lot of it was founded on this idea that Bitcoin is premium collateral, and right now there is no premium collateral on Solana. If you had to make a very simple pitch on why you're bringing ZEC to Solana, what would that be?
Access. You should be able to buy Zcash. I mean, I think everyone do your own research, of course, look into it, say, okay, do I want to own this or not? Maybe you do, maybe you think it's a terrible investment, maybe you think it's an amazing investment, but you shouldn't not own it because you can't figure out how to use the wallet. You should not own it because you don't want it. Fine. But we want it to be easy on Solana where everyone can access it for a penny, right? To get in and out, trade it, in and out in a moment's notice for seconds for cheap. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what we're going to do for many more assets really soon.
Absolutely. Today, as of the date of us filming this podcast, at least, A16Z just released their State of Crypto 2025 update, and there's some really interesting stuff in there. But the one that caught my eye specifically was the focus on privacy.
Yep.
Specifically, crypto and blockchain privacy. The amount of Google searches for those search terms hit record highs over the past couple of months. To that point, Zcash narrative makes total sense with that thesis. But I think there is a very strong connection between decentralized security and privacy.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure.
I thought, maybe we can talk on that more, how those ethos are connected.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of ownership and ability, not only to have the assets that you hold to be secured via a known operator set that you could trust, and also have transactions that you process on your own be private. I think there's a very interesting correlation there. It also goes into the ethos of self-sovereignty, right. Ability to really, truly own the assets that you own. Without having either centralization risks or risks that a third party is going to take them.
Yeah, I don't just want other people to see my transactions. I also don't want them to own my transactions. Exactly. I don't want them to own my assets. Yeah, I want to own my own assets, 100%. And I want control over who can see what I'm doing.
It's interesting. I think Ian Rogers probably said this 3 or 4 times during our podcast with him. And he said this around multiple different, podcasts that he's done, but it's if not self-custody, then why crypto?
Right.
But I think that's very important to the privacy narrative that you're seeing now too. So, the asset, Zcash, appreciated a lot in value, and there was just a lot of demand for it to be tradable on Solana, but I think it will continue definitely over the coming years.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the beautiful things about being able to spin up a DCT in 17 days is you set a precedent for the future. So if I am a new project, right, or a protocol, and I want to bring my asset over to Solana, do I just reach out to you and we get it done in 17 days? Is that the expectation now, Jack?
Just reach out to us,
Maybe sooner now.
Maybe sooner.
Yeah.
It depends on obviously chain specific factors, but look, we're looking to bring large TAM assets over to Solana. We're very commercial. We like to work with teams that want to work and find ways to find solutions. And so, I think reach out to us, hit us up, and we'll get it done. We're gonna get a lot of these done, right? Mm-hmm. It's not that hard. We've done so much of the work already that it's actually not nearly as hard for us to do a lot of this stuff as it would be for virtually anyone else. So yeah, let's do business.
So we've demonstrated power to scale zenBTC, a decentralized custody token. We've demonstrated ability to launch a decentralized custody token from scratch in 17 days.
Yeah.
So if you are a believer in what Zenrock is building, what is the best way to get involved?
I mean, the Rock token obviously is the best way to get involved. It's really the only way to get involved or, own zenBTC. I mean, look, the Rock token owns ZR Chain. Right? The Rock token is the way to get exposure to ZR Chain. If that's something that you think is going to scale, and you think, I think the Rock token, we don't really spend too much time thinking about price. We trade for 20 million FTV. So if you think, the network's worth more than that, then take a look.
On that point, look, we fundamentally believe that time in the market is better than timing the market. There's no way to time your TGE. You can get lucky, you can get very unlucky, more unlucky than lucky many times. But that being said, we just want to show provenance. We want to show that we're out there doing very interesting things. And if you're interested in building out a cross-chain lending product on ZR chain, we're right there. We'll provide you the tools, we'll provide you the BD support, the go-to-market support for that, and be a day one partner there. If you're looking to launch a DCT and enable your token to be accessible on Solana, we'll be right there with you and help you build this out. So please reach out, and we're pretty loud on Twitter, but going to be louder. But reach out if there's any interest.
Great.
Sweet.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it. Again, this has been an amazing conversation about the progress you guys have made in 3 months. I'm excited to sit down again, probably in January.
Yeah.
And then we can have another State of Zenrock and see just how much more you accomplish in the future.
Yeah.
So thank you, Adi
Thanks.
Jack.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Appreciate
Josh.
it.
Appreciate it. Man.
Thanks.